The sky was gray that morning, like it knew what kind of day it was going to be. The church was small, white-painted brick with a humble wooden cross fixed above the entrance. Baptist, of course. Her grandmother wouldn't have wanted it any other way. I stood beside Aislinn, my wife, our hands not touching. They hadn't in a while. People arrived slowly, their footsteps muffled against the gravel. Some of them I recognized, her two sisters, tight-lipped and overdressed. Others I didn't. Cousins probably, or distant relatives who never visited unless a casket was involved. I could tell who came for grief and who came for the money. You learn to spot the difference after enough funerals. Aislinn stood still, eyes fixed forward, not a tear in sight. She always carried herself like she had steel in her spine, but these days it felt more like ice. Cold. Distant. And yet, despite everything, I still loved her. Or maybe I loved the woman she used to be. Her grandmother was the kind of woman who seemed indestructible, raised 3 daughters on her own, ran a successful business from scratch, and still had the energy to bake for the church every Sunday. Everyone knew she was wealthy, but there was this silent agreement. The money would be spread out, shared. That's what everyone thought. We moved to the family estate after the service, where casseroles and condolences flowed in equal measure. The place smelled like lemon oil and secrets. Jolene, Aislinn's mother, was already playing hostess with that fake smile she wore like makeup, always too thick. Her sisters huddled together, whispering like schoolgirls at the back of the room. I caught a glance exchanged between them and a younger cousin, eyes darting, fingers pointing subtly upstairs. I saw one of them disappear briefly, returning with something clasped tightly in her hand, then slipping it into her coat. Aislinn's always been her favorite, one cousin muttered behind me. But I didn't think it'd go that far. Jolene waved the family into the study. That's when the attorney arrived, gray suit, briefcase, serious face. We followed him in silence. The air in the room was thick, not from emotion, but expectation. He opened the will, read it with clinical precision. To my beloved granddaughter, Aislinn. He paused. I leave the entirety of my estate, including all liquid and non-liquid assets, totaling approximately $300 million. Gasps. Audible. Sharp. Her mother didn't say a word, just stood, heels clicking on the hardwood, and walked out. One of the sisters muttered something that sounded like, unbelievable. Aislinn didn't flinch, not a blink, not a breath, just stood there, expressionless. I leaned toward her, whispering, "That's incredible. Congratulations." She turned, her voice low and cold. "It doesn't change anything." That was the first crack. After the funeral, things shifted fast. She stopped sleeping in our bed, started locking her office door. Her phone became an extension of her hand. Lawyers called constantly. I asked what she was working on. She brushed me off with a shrug. One night, I stood outside the door and heard her say, "It's done. I got everything." That line didn't sound like relief. It sounded like strategy. I started watching more closely. A week later, she left her office door ajar. Just a crack. That's all it took. Inside, I found a folder labeled Exit Plan. It was too clean, too organized. Draft prenups, ones I never signed. Wire transfer receipts to offshore accounts I didn't know existed. One-way flight confirmations to destinations she used to say she hated. It wasn't the money that hit me, it was the timeline. She'd been planning this before the funeral, before the will, maybe even before we said I do. I didn't confront her, not yet. I needed to be sure, but everything started looking different after that. Every smile felt like a performance. Every silence felt rehearsed. And then I noticed the bags. Small at first, cosmetics, shoes, then her work laptop, then clothes started disappearing from the closet. I asked her, "Going somewhere?" She didn't even look up. "Just cleaning up. Don't make a big deal." A text came in that night from a friend of mine who was at the funeral. "Hey, didn't want to stir things, but I overheard Aislinn talking to a guy outside the church. Sounded like a divorce attorney." My stomach dropped. That night, after she went to bed, guest room again, I pulled out the exit plan folder and sat alone in the kitchen. The house was quiet, but my mind wasn't. This wasn't grief. This wasn't mourning. It was something else entirely. "This isn't grief," I whispered, fingers tightening on the folder's edge. "This is betrayal." I woke up to the cold side of the bed again. Aislinn was already gone. No note, no sound, no trace of her morning presence. Just the faint scent of her shampoo on the pillow, fading like everything else between us. The house wasn't grieving anymore. It was retreating. Silence had filled the halls like insulation, thick and unwelcoming. Our routines, once soft and warm with quiet laughter over coffee and scrambled eggs, had turned into something robotic. I cooked, she didn't eat. I spoke, she didn't answer. Last Friday, I suggested a weekend away. Just the two of us. Fresh air, distance from lawyers, phones, grief. She didn't even lift her head, just said, "I don't have time for that." No argument, no excuse, just rejection. I stood there holding a brochure from a place we used to love. She walked past it like it was a receipt. That was when it hit me. It wasn't that love had faded. It was being scrubbed out, one memory at a time. Her phone never left her hand. Even at dinner, she'd keep it in her lap, screen glowing under the table. Midnight, she'd be in the hallway whispering into it. When I asked who she was talking to, the answer was always the same. Estate stuff. Just legal wrap-up. But once I caught a whisper through the door. "No, not yet. He still doesn't know." That stuck in my head like a splinter. I started watching. She deleted her text now, cleared her call history. I couldn't remember the last time she asked me about my day. I started feeling like a guest in my own home, and not a welcome one. Then came the morning she left her laptop bag behind in a rush. Inside, buried beneath a stack of estate documents, was a flash drive. I told myself not to look, but I did. The files were organized, clinical, like everything she did lately. Voice memos, screenshots, conversations between her and someone saved as C. No names, just phrases that made my skin crawl. One voice memo began, "He's predictable. He still thinks I'm just tired." Another read, "The transfer's lined up once I confirm he's out of the way." I stared at the screen, trying to breathe. I wasn't a partner anymore. I was an obstacle. That night, I made steak, her favorite, set the table like our first date, lit a candle. I waited. She came home late, took one look at the setup and said, "We've changed." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "But did we change?" I asked. "Or did you just outgrow me?" She didn't answer, just walked past the table like it wasn't there. I sat alone. The steak went cold, the candle burned out. I threw everything in the trash, wondering what else was heading there too. The next day, I met Greg at Lou's Diner. Old vinyl booths, weak coffee, and strong opinions. Perfect place for uncomfortable truths. I told him what I'd found. His face didn't change, but his fingers tightened around his mug. "Look," he said finally, "I didn't want to get involved. But during the funeral week, I saw her with some guy, black SUV. It wasn't family." I nodded. I didn't even ask for details. I didn't want them. Not yet. "I didn't lose my wife," I told him. "She walked off the edge and I didn't see the cliff." That night, I got home to find her suitcase by the door. She didn't even try to hide it. "I have a meeting tomorrow," she said, eyes on her phone. "I'll be back, eventually." I didn't ask where, didn't ask when. I just stood there watching her pass by me like I was part of the furniture. She went upstairs. I stayed downstairs. "I used to think silence was peace," I said aloud, to no one. "But now I know it's where truths go to rot." The night crept in slow, quiet, like a thief. I sat in the living room, surrounded by the shadows of a house that used to breathe with life, now hollowed out by silence. I hadn't turned on the lights, didn't need to. I'd been sitting there, flipping through an old photo album I found buried behind some board games we never played anymore. In one of the pictures, Aislinn had her phone tilted just slightly, her thumb hovering like she was mid-text. Another shot. Thanksgiving 2 years ago. Her smile was polite, but her eyes weren't on me. They were looking off, like she was waiting for someone who wasn't at the table. There were notes scribbled on the back of receipts she'd tucked into the pages. Charity dinner, estate committee, late meeting. Except I remembered those nights. She hadn't come home smelling like wine and cigars from a gala. She came home like someone who had wiped away tears in the car. I grabbed her old tablet, hoping it still had battery. It did. No password. She hadn't used it in years, but inside the Notes app was a file. Asset reallocation. Bullet points. Figures. My name barely showed up. He'll be fine, one line read. Keep him calm until Q4. That's when it hit me. She didn't just drift away. She charted a course, and I was never part of the destination. The prenup. I'd almost forgotten we signed one. Basic stuff. If we split, what's hers is hers, what's mine is mine. No alimony, no drama. We were in love back then. No need to complicate things. I believed her. But then I found another file, not on the tablet, on a shared drive linked to her cloud. It had my name, our wedding date, but the clauses were all different. It detailed inheritance protections, private holdings, even provisions for spousal instability, whatever that meant. The signature line had my name scribbled across it. But I never signed this. And the date? 3 days before her grandmother died. I sat there, heart knocking in my chest like a warning bell. This wasn't just a woman pulling away. It was someone tightening the screws. She didn't want out. She wanted leverage. I called Sean, a buddy from college who'd gone into law, not divorce law, but close enough. I told him what I found, asked if a prenup could be altered like that without both signatures. He didn't answer right away. Man, he finally said, if she did what you think she did, that's fraud. But proving it, you'll need help. I gave him the name, Cody Bishop. I'd seen it pop up a few times in the old files. Family consultant, Iceland called him once. Sean did a quick check while we stayed on the line. There's no license, no firm, no records, he said. This guy isn't on any registry. Whatever he is, he's not legal. That name, C, the one from the voice memos, Cody, it was him. He wasn't just helping, he was guiding her. I couldn't sit still after that. I remembered an old email Iceland used in college, one we used to share passwords for. We had this joke phrase we made up during a trip to Savannah, our escape code, we called it. I tried it. I was in. Buried in the inbox were messages from C. Bishop's strategy, threads going back a year, subject lines like Stage 2 confirmed and narrative shift. Attachments included mock-ups of public posts, statements, even interview quotes. None of them true, all painting me like a man unraveling. They were building a character. And it wasn't me. It was the version of me she needed to justify what was coming. I pushed my chair back and stood, heart pounding so loud it filled the room. I reached for the coffee mug on the edge of the desk, didn't realize I was gripping it that tight until it shattered against the floor. Porcelain shards, like our trust. I caught my reflection in the window, jaw clenched, eyes bloodshot. I wasn't grieving anymore. I was awake. I drove straight to Jolene's house. Her porch light was still on, like she knew I'd be coming. She didn't act surprised. Evening, she said coolly, stepping aside without being asked. I didn't sit. How long have you known? She looked me over like she was sizing up a repairman, not a son-in-law. You were never one of us, she said. Iceland just finally realized it. I could feel my fists tightening at my sides. Did you help her forge my signature? Jolene smirked, like the question amused her. She didn't need help, just clarity. She was born to lead, not drag dead weight. She married me. She tested herself, Jolene said, tilting her head. And now she's passed. This family's always had obligations. Money isn't just wealth, it's legacy. You were a phase, not a partner. Then she added, soft and sharp as a blade. You were the first domino, son. She had to knock you down to set the others straight. I walked out before I did something I'd regret. But on the way back, I wasn't angry. I was focused. That kind of hurt, it doesn't scream. It plans. At home, I pulled out every folder, every device. I laid them out across the floor like a battlefield. Legal notes, bank receipts, screenshots, dates. I used a marker to chart the timeline on butcher paper. I began to see the gaps, the inconsistencies, the clues she missed. I called Sean again, told him to get me a name of someone who could verify document fraud. Then I opened a new bank account in a name I hadn't used in years. Quiet, separate, just in case. This wasn't heartbreak. This was preparation. Dinner was the kind of evening I'd once looked forward to. Jolene's house, soft yellow lights spilling out from windows, sweaters and wine glasses, a fireplace crackling just enough to warm the room. But when I walked in, the warmth felt staged. The table was exquisite, china, silverware, centerpieces, but Iceland didn't meet my eye. She sat beside her sisters, Jolene across from me, I tried to offer a smile. She nodded briefly. Her eyes dropped. Silence draped over us like a cold sheet. After the last course, as laughter echoed thinly around us, a courier came in with thick envelopes addressed to me but clearly sealed in Aislin's handwriting. My throat tightened. I opened one. It was a red-lined version of Grandma's will. Fine print, sentences inserted, clauses edging me out. Another envelope held bank statements with transfers that bore my account number. Large sums, withdrawals I never approved. Shock hit first, then anger. I studied the handwriting. It wasn't perfect, but close enough. Her sister's scrawl appeared on other documents. Evidence was stacking. Later, I drove to Marlena's office, her walls coated with law books, old diplomas. I laid out the envelopes. She frowned as she flipped through them. "These look altered," she said, tracing a red line with her finger. "In many states, inheritance after marriage is protected, but someone can exploit loopholes." When she warned me, if it was done in bad faith, you can challenge it, but it'll get messy, I felt something shift. Terror mixed with a pulse of strength. I wasn't blind anymore. I knew enough to fight. That night, I found Aislinn in the drawing room. Firelight threw shadows across the walls. I asked quietly, "Was Grandma's will always meant to favor you alone?" She looked up, surprised. "Didn't Grandma love me most?" she replied, voice smooth. "Love doesn't excuse deceit," I said. Her lips parted, but no guilt showed. She stood. Without a word, she walked away. Her back straight, a silence so loud I could hear it. Marley found me in the hallway afterward. Her face soft, voice lower than mine. She gave me Grandma's notebook, the one filled with old drafts, regrets written in pen and tears. One page read them, "The family might be more hungry than loyal." Marley said, "Sham, you'll have to fight fire with truth." Grandma's voice was tangible in that notebook. I touched the pages and felt anger and comfort at once. Back home, I spread everything across a desk, the red-lined will, the notebook, the bank statements. I called Sean. "Get me someone who can verify document fraud." I made plans. Investigator, forensic handwriting expert, witnesses. I plotted a path forward. No yelling, no begging, just clarity. I whispered into empty air. "You tried to rewrite my life. I'll rewrite your lies." I locked Grandma's notebook in a drawer. My hands still shook, but I stepped out of the room with resolve in my bones. The cold truth won't warm us, but it will light the way. They cornered me in her legal office. Aislinn's lawyer sat across the table, stacks of printed documents between us. When they slid the first envelope in front of me, my heart hit my ribs. Asset concealment, accusations that I had mishandled something. I blinked. She was calm, too calm, like she was watching me fail. "You can't win a game you joined too late," she said after a beat. A voice recorder sitting quiet on the desk betrayed nothing. They stood up. I wanted to argue, but the sting of betrayal kept me silent. Outside, a reporter caught me. Flashbulbs. That night, I felt the world was watching me not as a husband, but as a suspect. Next morning, I saw the news. A screen lit up with headlines. Estate dispute, husband under scrutiny. Marital misconduct allegations. Pictures, unflattering, selected, of me alone at the car, looking worn. She was on camera in soft focus, voice trembling, eyes red. Victim, graceful, wronged. No one asked if it was true. My colleagues called. My email lit up with headlines still. Marlena warned me, "This isn't about money anymore. It's narrative warfare." I shut the TV off. My reflection in the screen looked hollow, but determined. Jonah called, someone I thought I could count on. I laid it out. The prenup, the forged deed, the leaks. He hesitated. Then, "Tony, I can't mess with my own reputation." He said he was consulting for Cody Bishop's media team. You hear that word reputation when people start choosing sides. "It's not personal, it's just strategic," he said. That was the last straw. I hung up. I was done with being second in someone's story. Marley found me pacing the veranda later. The sun was lowering, long shadows stretching across the porch. She warned, "They planned something tonight. A dinner. They'll try to trap you in front of everyone." I closed my eyes. Thought of Grandma's words, of the notebook. I nodded. If they want a show, I'll be the last act they'll never forget. That dinner was chaos wrapped in velvet. I arrived late wearing Grandma's cufflinks, subtle, meaningful. Jolene stood to deliver a toast. Her voice was warm at first, charms about family, legacy, then cold. "To those who remember what's right," she said, staring past me. Aislinn cried a little, just enough. The room leaned in. I waited. When the moment silenced, I said, "Truth isn't a story you craft. It's a storm you survive." I pulled out my phone, played a voice memo, Aislinn's voice and Cody's, planning. The room shifted. Faces flashed. Silence became accusation. After that, whispers followed me out the door. Some relatives left crying. Others avoided my gaze. Jolene banged her fist on the table, calling me a vulture. Marley slipped me a scrap of paper, Grandma's handwriting. "Don't fight for me. Fight for what's right." I stepped into the night air, cold without a coat. I inhaled. Let the weight of my chest drop. My mind circled. The breaking point wasn't when she lied. It was when I stopped waiting for her to be honest. I woke up that morning to an envelope on the kitchen counter. No handwriting I hadn't seen before, but something about it twisted in my gut. I picked it up. My name wasn't on the deed inside, only hers, Aislinn. My face, my signature, erased from the place I thought I'd built. It wasn't about money anymore. She'd taken my entire legacy. I could almost feel Grandma's portrait above the mantel shifting in its frame. The air in the room felt sharp. I called Marlena before I'd even poured coffee. She answered slow. I told her. She listened. Then she said the words I'd been dreading. "It looks altered. Those signatures might not be yours. If true, you're being erased legally." My heart pounded. I stared at the deed again. There were date stamps off by hours. A notary who'd signed it had no record in the county for that date. Somebody covered their tracks, and I realized how far she had planned, how deeply. Later, I sat at my study desk, lamp on low. Among the clutter was a napkin folded into a maple leaf, the same fold Grandma loved. I stared at it as if it were a mirror. There were tears I didn't expect. Recognition. Grief. But also this clarity rising like fire. That small gesture, once invisible, now felt like proof. I wasn't removed yet. I was remembered. Still. Sunset found me on the porch with Marley. Orange sky behind her, soft light caught dust in the air. She handed me a photo, the old deed, Grandma's signature, mine, dated years ago. The proof I'd been seeking. She said, "You are in there." She tried to erase you, but she missed the corners. And I felt something shift, not just hope, but something fierce. That night I hired a handwriting expert. I watched the minutes crawl until his call came. He told me what I suspected. Aislinn's signature on the deed was forged. It looked like mine underneath, rubbed out and overlaid. It wasn't perfect, but enough. Enough to challenge her. Enough to reclaim. I laid out all evidence I had. Old title deeds, notebook with Grandma's entries, photo proof. I drafted affidavits, wrote letters to the county office. I rehearsed what I'd say if they asked. Calm, precise, truthful. I thought of Grandma's voice, "Fight for what's right." And I whispered back, "This fight is bigger than fear." Closing the study door, I locked the old notebook in a drawer. The maple leaf napkin I tucked in my pocket. Outside, the night air was cold. I stood in it, steady. I didn't need to shout. It didn't matter who heard. What mattered was, I moved. Was no longer silent. Late evening settled over the estate and the halls felt narrower tonight. I was in the study, the desk lamp on low, sorting documents when I heard raised voices upstairs. Rylan, Aislinn's daughter, confronting her mother. I crept toward the door, each step tight in my chest. Her voice trembled. "Why do you act like he's invisible even when he built this place?" Silence snapped the air. Aislinn's answer was cold, smooth, a deflection. Rylan's eyes flashed, guilt and defiance mingled. I stood back, feeling a sharp pride. Finally, someone spoke what had swelled in my gut for weeks. I stayed still, letting that moment hang. Marley met me later that night, carrying Grandma's notebook. She slipped the worn journal into my hands. I opened it, pages crackling under my fingertips. One entry said, "Family more afraid of truths than loss." Another, "If one strikes down another, the roots tremble." My eyes stung. These were Grandma's words, not mine, but they echoed in my bones. I traced the handwriting, compared it to the forged deed. Lines, curves, the way she looped her G on that page bore uncanny resemblance to Aislin's recent legal mess. My heart pounded. This wasn't erasure, it was a lie she tried to sew over truth. But Grandma's pen had drawn the real map. I shoved the notebook into my jacket. My anger wasn't quiet anymore. I spent the next day tracking witnesses. The old accountant, Mr. Rogers, remembered seeing ink stains on early title documents days before the funeral when my name was properly alongside Grandma's. Then the landscaper, Maria, told me she'd help me plant the garden that now appeared in public photos next to Aislin's name. That garden stood under her name now, in public announcements. I taped their statements, voices steady, my own heart steadier. Memories and demonstrations collided. I wasn't just fighting papers. I was gathering proof that I had never been invisible. A note on my desk, unsigned, tipped me off next. A local community newspaper was preparing a piece. I found a draft headline, "Inheritance Dispute, Was the Husband Written Out?" That title stung. Someone wanted me seen as ghost, erased from memory. Aislin's camp spun it quick. He's just upset. But the public scene was shifting. I felt the tremors of empowerment. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel powerless. Aislinn invited the family to dinner again. A trap, I knew. I walked in wearing Grandma's watch, subtle, heavy with intention. I placed the notebook on the table in front of Jolene, slid Mr. Rogers' affidavit into view. Faces stiffened. Silence rose around us. I stood. Truth isn't what you erase, it's what you avoid admitting. Aislin's face flickered, guilt or surprise, I couldn't tell. Jolene's mask cracked. Some relatives gasped, others murmured behind hands. I raised my voice just enough. You can't rewrite history with silence. The notebook trembled under my fingers. I looked around, meeting each gaze with something unspoken. A demand for acknowledgement. After the dinner, people drifted away quietly. Some followed, glared, avoided. Aislinn vanished into the hallway. I didn't chase. Instead, I stepped into the cool night, moonlight illuminating my path. I took Grandma's notebook out again, feeling its weight. My voice in the darkness. You can't unwrite me now. Then I recorded a message, steady, clear. Not rage, not revenge. Just the truth I'd found through fragments and whispers. I stepped into the grand hall under dim chandeliers, Grandma's cufflinks on my cuff, quiet defiance. Cameras flashed, guests murmured. I saw portraits lining the walls. Hers prominently displayed, mine conspicuously missing. Replaced. The hush when I passed by told me many already believe her narrative, yet inside me sharpened a resolve. Something inside that portrait gallery cracked open. Jolene raised her glass, voice warm. Let us honor Grandma's legacy, those truly devoted to this family. But there was poison in her tone, a twist meant to wound, and the room reacted. My throat tightened. Aislinn's smile was polished yet brittle. Some guests exchanged glances as if Jolene's toast had exposed more than it praised. My heart tightened with betrayal. I raised my own glass, but not before a pull of anger twisted inside me. Loyalty does not bow to greed, I thought. At the table beside Aislinn, I spotted the napkin folded into a maple leaf. Exactly the same fold I made at Grandma's funeral. She'd placed it deliberately, under her place setting, reclaiming something that wasn't hers to decide. My chest ached. That symbol, once shared memory, now weaponized. I touched it lightly, fingernails brushing its edges. It was a marker, an echo of loss, and proof that I still mattered. Then I rose, slow, deliberate. In that hush I said, "You heard devotion, but loyalty doesn't answer to greed." The room froze. Aislinn's eyes widened. Jolene's grip on her glass slackened. I revealed the red-line deed and passed out excerpts from Grandma's old notebook, words she wrote about fairness, love, memory. I turned on my recorder. Aislinn's voice floated through the device, cold and rehearsed. They were planning. I held nothing back. My voice pressed, "Truth isn't a story you craft. It's a legacy to preserve." Cameras shifted. Whispers grew. Aislinn looked exposed. That veneer of victimhood slipped. Guests shifted, some visibly siding with me, others recoiling. I watched it happen. It wasn't loud victory. It was gathering momentum. A force quietly undeniable. Dinner broke apart as alliances realigned. Aislinn slipped away, her composure cracking. I stood as people drifted. Outside, lanterns lit the courtyard. Photographers lingered. I pulled in cold air. The moonlight was sharp. I held Grandma's notebook in one hand, my breath visible. I thought, this is more than proof. It's turning point. What they tried to hide is now visible. What they tried to silence echoes loud. This night changed everything. I wake to sunlight creeping through the study curtains, the air gentle and quiet like nothing of last night's storm remains. My phone vibrates. News alerts, headlines flashing inheritance battles. Husband reinstated. Court freezes forged deed. My name front and center. I sit at my desk, fingers wrapped around a mug, staring at the old photo of Grandma, her smile soft, napkin folded into a maple leaf beside her. Somehow the world feels altered. The title deed is in my name again. It's not perfect, but it's honest. Marlena called before noon. The court has frozen the red line deed, she said. They've opened a full investigation into the forgery. Relief washes over me in waves. I still feel brittle, but lighter. I open the documents one more time. Affidavits, Grandma's notebook entries, experts' reports, everything lines up. I text Marley. We're not out of the woods, but we've cleared the path. Her reply, like roots poking through concrete. I sit in that moment, steady, sure that what we built on truth can last. Aislinn hasn't reached out since the gala. Silence in place of apology. Some relatives call, some don't. Raylan leaves a note slipped under my door. I wish things had been different, but I see you now. That small message stings and soothes. Pride and regret dance in my chest. Victory doesn't erase the nights I waited, the hands that pulled away. But acknowledgement, however late, matters. I clear my study. Grandma's notebook, the maple leaf napkin, photos, they go into a memory box. Old shells of pain being preserved, not tossed. I think of Grandma's lessons, honesty, rootedness, purpose. Not just land or money, but integrity. What remains when it all ends? I pull out a blank legal pad, trusts, protective clauses, ensuring no one in the future gets erased like I almost was. Standing up, I feel calm resolve. Later I write a message, public. I share pieces of the story, warning others about ignoring small signs. Quoting Maya Angelou, "You may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them." I ask, have you ever lost yourself to loyalty? It's never too late to reclaim your story. I stop before posting. I sit back, then I send it. Morning air hits me on the porch. Memory box in my hand, the napkin inside. Breeze stirs fabric. It's a quiet echo. I step forward, not in defeat, but toward what comes next. The house, the legacy. What matters is what I'll build from here. This is not the end of our story. It's only the beginning.